Hello everybody, it is Saturday afternoon. A big snowstorm is about to hit my area, so I may or may not be buried under 7 to 14 inches of snow, and if not, you know, praise Jesus, hallelujah, praise the Lord. Anyway, we're gonna get on with this video. Today's video is about Jennette McCurdy. A lot of new information has come out about Jennette McCurdy as she is on a huge press tour for her new novel, Half His Age. And this is about a 17-year-old girl that is in a very inappropriate situation. We're not gonna call it a relationship, a very inappropriate situation with her teacher. And this is loosely based off of her own experience when she was about 17 to 18 years old and she was dating a writer or some person on the crew of iCarly back in the early 2010s. So this is when Jennette was literally like barely 18, barely legal, not even legal apparently. And so she's really talking about her experience, and she released this novel to kind of serve as an outlet and as a mode of awareness for people. She doesn't name him, but it's assumed that this person is Paul Glazer. A lot of people back in the day were clocking that she was spending a lot of time with this man. You know, he's in his 30s. There was apparently photos of them. So a lot of people suspect that that's who he was. He really fits the description of the person that she was talking to at the time. So yeah, this guy, he's not a stranger, at least to people who've been keeping up with Jennette. I wasn't keeping up with her back in the day like that, but it's not a stranger to people who were. So Jennette has talked about her relationship in her memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died. And she's also talked about it, you know, transparently online. And basically she says that their friendship started as late night hangouts on set and where he'd share his favorite music and movies. And she'd pretend to like what he liked, you know, just to get him to like her, you know. She wanted to keep his attention and approval. She then says things turned romantic after she moved out of her mom's house. You know, this was her first time being really independent. Jennette was very sheltered. You know, she talks a lot about this in her book, I'm Glad My Mom Died, where her mom was really just the worst person in the world and didn't respect her boundaries whatsoever, even to the point of her physical boundaries. You know, her mother would bathe her as a teenager, and Jennette was just very sheltered from a lot of things. So she wasn't aware of a lot. So he showed up to her apartment drunk, and Jennette didn't even know that he was drunk because she had never been around alcohol. She didn't really know much about alcohol at all. She didn't even know how to really identify a drunk person. And she said that's when the first physical encounter happened, and she was still very new to this kind of intimacy. Eventually things did escalate. You know, they ended up getting very physical, and you know, at first it wasn't like that because he was trying to be respectful of her religious background. You know, she was Mormon and didn't believe in having sex until marriage, and so he was respectful of that at first, but then eventually he kept trying to push her more and more. He then ends up pressuring Jennette into oral sex. He was kind of manipulating her by saying, you can't meet my needs, like you can't do what I need you to do. So pressured her into doing that. She told him that she was nervous, and he told her that, hey, I'll guide you through it. More manipulation. He then ended up taking her virginity. It was something that he did to teach her, you know what I mean? Like he was trying to teach her the game sexually. Oftentimes they would meet in secret, and Jennette was really desperate to be seen as mature by this man. You know, Jennette talks about, you know, growing up in the industry and being around all these different people. She wasn't growing up like regular kids, and when someone actually treated her with adult authority, like when someone looked at her as an adult, she really respected that and wanted to keep that in play. She wanted to keep that relationship in play. She wanted to keep that because it made her feel grown and mature. You know, her mother didn't approve of this relationship either. Her mother didn't exactly know what was happening, but she suspected. You know, Jennette talks about how her mother suspected, like, hey, where are you going? Like, hey, who are you meeting up with? And this was while her mother was dying of cancer. So her mother was terminally ill and she was dealing with this man. This man also had a live-in girlfriend. This man literally had a live-in girlfriend during all of this. So, you know, he's manipulating Jennette, he's grooming Jennette, and then he also has this, you know, woman on the side. Eventually he wanted to move in with her. He wanted to move in with her, and Jennette said, no, like I can't have my mom finding out. So she would get hotel rooms and they'd meet up in all these different hotels. It then came that when her mother passed, Jennette realized that she could not stay in this situation anymore. You know, it was too much to deal with her mother passing away, the grief of that, as well as the toxicity of the relationship. It was way too much for her to shoulder, and that's what really snapped her out of it and made her realize, like, this is terrible. Like, I can't keep going on like this. And looking back on this now, Jennette realizes that this relationship was really creepy, really, you know, imbalanced, emotionally exhausting, and she calls him an effing loser, which honestly, I 100% agree with. You know, preying on a literal like 17, 18-year-old girl working on set. I mean, it's just, is crazy. So yeah, Jennette has not chosen to confirm his name. Again, it's widely suspected that this man is Paul Glazer. You know, he was a script supervisor on set. The age, the timeline, the behind the scenes role that Jennette describes, like it seems to line up 1-to-1, but Jennette hasn't exposed the name because she wants to keep the situation or the telling of this story, she wants to keep it central to herself. She doesn't want to bash anybody. Like, I presume that that's not her role. Like, she doesn't want to bash or send like a hate train to this person. She wants to keep it focused on her and her healing and also what she learned from this, and also warn others about imbalanced situations like these. And so going a bit more into the power dynamics, I wanted to talk a little bit more about those. Again, he made her feel mature beyond her years and constantly praised her intellect and emotional depth, which is a textbook grooming tactic that makes someone feel seen and special. You know, when you're constantly buttering someone up, especially somebody young that didn't really get the chance to live freely and make her own decisions, you know, being very controlled by their mother, being manipulated by their mom, they want to feel mature. They want to feel like, wow, somebody sees me as not just this little kid that they can control. They see me as an equal. And so Jennette, like that was, I mean, I feel like that was something that she was hooked on. She was hooked on it because she didn't get it in her regular life. And Jennette admits that she was so desperate for freedom and independence that she clung to the validation. She realizes that those compliments were ways to keep her isolated and hooked. Again, he controlled the dynamic by saying, we're gonna listen to this music, we're gonna listen to these songs, we're gonna do this and that, and she pretended to like it so that way he would continue liking her. He'd also compare her to his ex-girlfriend, implying that Jennette needed to do more if she wanted to keep him, you know? So, oh, my ex-girlfriend's this, my ex-girlfriend's that. So a lot of those tactics are used to keep somebody hooked and to make them feel like they need to change themselves to fit what you want, to fit the narrative that you're looking for, or they're looking for, not you. Not you. She also said that even his friends' wives seemed cold to her, which she once thought was judgment, but she now realizes that they probably saw the truth about him before she did. So again, connecting this to her memoir, because she did speak about this a lot in her memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died, she spoke about how, you know, her mom was really toxic and controlling. Her mom had control over her body, her career, her relationships, even her hygiene. Her mom was not going for her having a boyfriend. That was not going to fly in the McCurdy household. She wasn't about to have no boyfriend, nobody outside the Mormon church. You know, Jennette's mom didn't even like Miranda Cosgrove, and Jennette speaks about how her and Miranda were really close around that time, and Jennette's mom didn't like her because Miranda wasn't Mormon. So if she won't even let her have non-Mormon friends or disapproves of her friends, how's she going to approve of a boyfriend that's especially outside the church? Absolutely not. She said the age gap relationship, I hate to even call it a relationship, but she says the age gap relationship felt like rebellion. It felt like her way of basically saying, suck it, mom. Like, I'm going to do what I want. I'm 18 now. I'm grown. I can do this. I can do that. And in her memoir, she's exploring that age gap more in depth, just how damaging an age gap like that is. So she also went on the Call Her Daddy podcast, basically reciting all these details that I've just shared with you guys. She was talking about how creepy and twisted it was, how she realized how disgusting it was, how manipulative it was, how exhausting it was. Like, she really goes in depth in her story, and, you know, talks about the co-stars and all these different things. So I'm really happy that Jennette has a platform, or she's really building her platform to be very outspoken about these kinds of issues, because this kind of stuff happens in Hollywood all the time. Like I said, it may not always be in your face. Like, a lot of times it looks like everyone's just doing their job normally, but a lot of this stuff, it's very subtle. And when you don't have parents that are like, you know, that are for your welfare and care about you and love you, that's how you get trapped into situations and dynamics like these. Okay, I really need to be going to sleep, but I just wanted to explain real quick what I mean by the subtlety, or expound upon the whole subtlety thing, especially in the Hollywood industry and the child actor industry. You know, from all the stories we hear, a lot of these adults will butter up the kids. They'll get to know them, get close to them, like how Brian Peck did to Drake Bell. If you ever watch Quiet on Set, you know, Brian Peck was really trying to get close to Drake by talking about similar interests and sharing facts and stuff to befriend Drake. But, you know, Drake had a very observant father. However, Jennette's mother really didn't care for Jennette's welfare, or she thought she was caring for her welfare, but it was in a really sick and twisted way. And that really led Jennette down a dark path. And it's just a shame, because especially in the Hollywood industry, you know, it's not like these kids are going to, you know, get taken care of, like they're going for daycare, or they're going because, you know, they're going to get a service provided to them. These are employees of these big time money hungry producers, crew members, whatever, you know, so they're very exposed. And when you don't have a parent that's really looking out for your welfare and trying to steward you properly, you're gonna go down a really crazy path. I immediately think of Aaliyah. Aaliyah, I think, is a perfect example. I mentioned her later in the video, but I think she's such a good example of parents that really weren't checking for their daughter's welfare and letting a lot of things go unchecked. So I just wanted to share that because that's just like on my mind. Jennette was the breadwinner for her family. Jennette was the perfect daughter, the sheltered good girl who did everything her mommy wanted. And so when you're raised under a umbrella like that, or you're raised under something like that, it's going to lead you to want to find other ways of finding your independence, finding your voice, finding your freedom. And you're not going to go towards healthy outlets because you weren't taught any healthy outlets. You weren't taught to be free. You weren't taught to be independent. You weren't taught to be explorative. Is that the right word? Like you weren't taught to explore. You weren't taught to figure out your identity outside of your parents or expectations or money, or in Jennette's case, the industry. I have seen some comments too where some people are like, oh, she was 18. Why are we even talking about this? But the thing is, this started before she was 18. Jennette says that she was 17 or 18. So it started before it was 18. And it doesn't flip a switch. A switch isn't flipped as soon as you turn 18. Right? Like a switch doesn't flip as soon as you turn 18 and you gain all the knowledge and wisdom of like a 45-year-old adult. No, you're literally acting upon the 17 years you had prior. You really only have 17 years of knowledge and wisdom when you turn 18. You don't have 20 years of it, 30 years of it, however many years. I think it's so disgusting when people try to say that this is a non-issue because she was of age. This girl never had a normal life, a normal childhood, a normal upbringing, a normal relationship with her parents. Her parents' relationship was far from normal. Her mother was disgusting towards her. So why, like, I'm confused as to why people are confused. So there was some controversy surrounding the name of the book, Half His Age. People thought that she was glorifying age gap relationships. And I feel like Jennette was doing the furthest thing from. If anything, she is highlighting just how gruesome and disgusting these relationships are, how it really does a number on your psyche. You know, so I think that's really what she's illuminating in this book. And again, it's like basically off of her own story. So she's not glorifying it, she's using it to spread awareness. That's why she's condemning it so much. And all these interviews and all these articles where she's talking about it, she's condemning it. So this isn't glorification, it's awareness. I think she's raising awareness and she's doing it in a provocative way. And I think that's Jennette's style. You know, just like her first memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died, that's a provocative title. And if you don't understand the story behind it, you're going to think she's crazy. But once you get the story, you kind of understand more the angle she's going for. And I think that's the same with this novel. So that's how Jennette is. You know, I think she's provocative. I think that's just her style of writing. And I think it works. You know, it works because she's making a statement. You know, she was silenced for most of her life and now she finally has her voice. In the past, I guess maybe 10 years or so, she's finally been healing, going to therapy and finding her voice. So I say, you know what? Do you. That's why I say to Jennette, do you. So what's so interesting is I'm actually reading an article right now. I just found it where Vulture is critiquing Jennette's novel and saying that it's too provocative. And basically, do we need this to be so provocative to understand that it's bad? And they feel like she put those like graphic scenes in there to support shock value, basically. I'm curious what anyone who's read the novel, if you've read it, what your position is, because Jennette's angle is, hey, I want you to feel uncomfortable. I want you to feel icky because that helps you face the reality of the situation. So I'm curious for anyone that's read the novel, because I haven't read it yet, so I can't form an opinion. Actually, I don't know if I even want to read it because stuff like that, I don't really like, reading stuff like this, but I feel like I understand Jennette's position, but I'm curious if anyone's read it, like what your thoughts are. Like, do you think that it's too provocative and that it takes away from her point, or do you feel like it had exactly what it needed? So yeah, I'm just curious about that. So yeah, I just think it's really sad. You know, I just think, obviously Jennette's story is not the only story. You know, we have so many. I mean, even like the first one that popped into my mind was rkelly and Aaliyah. You know, that one is a whole rabbit hole. The rkelly and Aaliyah story is just so insane. And I still look at Aaliyah's mom a little funny. You know, some people might get upset in the comments when I say that, but I don't like Aaliyah's mom. I really don't. But even though I empathize with her, the fact that she lost her daughter, but okay, I don't want to say I don't like Aaliyah's mom. That's kind of harsh. More like I don't like the way she handled certain things back in the day with Aaliyah. And Aaliyah herself has just said some weird things about her mom that's just made me really raise my eyebrows. So I don't know. Maybe I'll make a video on that if anyone cares. Let me know. Yeah, I just really wanted to talk about this. I wanted to get on and like kind of just share my thoughts on this and kind of break down her recounting this story and telling everyone about what she's been through and really expounding upon it. I really appreciate Jennette in the fact that she's being so open about her experiences and talking so much about Hollywood and the damaging effects, especially when you have parents that aren't in your corner. I like how she's not necessarily like, I don't feel like Jennette's positioning herself in like such a huge way where she's carrying a weight, if that makes sense. Like, I don't feel like she's acting like, okay, I need to be the #1 spokesperson for these people. No, she's just sharing her story and being authentic. So I really appreciate that, because I think it gives normies like me and you insight into kind of what these kids experience and what it was like back then. So I hope you guys liked this video. I hope you enjoyed me getting into it, and I'm gonna continue prepping for the snowstorm that's about to hit. But I'll talk to y'all later, and thanks for watching.